Hello, it's Cried here, with the ultimate guide to hand-to-hand arts or martial arts in Elden Ring. Despite only having 2 weapons in this category, this weapon type seems to be quite popular. Instead of the movesets though, I'm going to be doing things a bit differently for this weapon type, and quickly cover the attack rating of their different infusions. If you've watched a few of my weapon breakdowns, you'll probably know how to complete this phrase. I'm happy to announce that Dryleaf arts and Dane's Footwork mirror each other's attack in all infusions for all stat distributions. This makes covering their attack quite simple. Heavy beats keen slightly, and lightning beats fire. Heavy or lightning will depend on if you want strength or dexterity for the rest of your setup. And despite feeling like quality weapons, Quality Infusion is still not strong enough at level 150. Definitely the best one among the 5 once you have enough stat points though. Flame, Sacred, and Magic Infusion are probably not going to be too common of a choice. This is because hand-to-hand weapons are paired weapons, and I'm assuming most people who pick this up are committed to using it as a paired weapon. So if you're focusing on dealing damage with their paired moveset, it can be awkward to also hold a catalyst for casting. Now, the more interesting infusions are definitely the status ones. This is because their paired moveset does a lot of multi-hits quite quickly, so you build up status fast. By the way, for all motion values for hand-to-hand combat specifically, look at the number outside and not the bullet portion. From my testing, this seems to be the case for damage and poise damage. The status one is the same, so it doesn't matter. Basically, it doesn't build up twice or deal damage twice, despite having the bullet number there, just once. So yeah, weird it's written this way, but just read the number outside and not the bullet. As for Occult Infusion, neither Dryleaf Arts nor Dane's Footwork has base status effect, so this is also not a great choice. Alright, that has to be the fastest infusions section I've done. Let's look at the 2 unique weapon arts only accessible to hand arts, Palm Blast and Dryleaf Whirlwind. One quick thing, I'm baffled that Dane's Footwork came with Palm Blast and not Dryleaf Whirlwind as its base weapon art. Anyways, Palm Blast. The skill gives hand arts access to a ton of hyper armor. In PvP, the uncharged version grants 200 hyper armor, while the charged version grants 700 hyper armor. The hyper armor also grants a 50% reduction to incoming poise damage, and you also gain 7.5% damage reduction during hyper armor. For PvE, charging Palm Blast is enough to poise through moves that are not guaranteed to poise break you. This hyper armor lasts the entire way throughout your charge if you choose to charge it, and you will most likely choose to charge this weapon art the vast majority of the time, especially in PvE. Charging this weapon art more than doubles its damage, and nearly doubles its stance or poise damage, going from 20 stance damage to 36. And another important thing is that the skill's AoE turns huge, so it is much easier to land the charged version of this weapon art. One thing to note is that charging this skill does not increase the status damage dealt. Furthermore, its base status damage is already a pathetically low 65%. This skill focuses on dealing damage and poise damage. On the other hand, Dryleaf Whirlwind is a quick succession of 4 kicks, with the first kick and the last kick being extra strong. It does not count as a jump attack, but it is a kicking attack, so it is buffed by the Shattered Stone Talisman and Divine Bird Warrior Greaves, just like any other move from the hand-to-hand arts that kicks. This Ash of War is fairly good at building up status damage, and also deals a respectable 28 stance damage if you manage to land all 4 kicks. In fact, Dryleaf Whirlwind has slightly higher stance damage per second than charged Palm Blast, but unfortunately, it does not grant you any hyper armor while in the air. Maybe it'll get buffed in the future, but for now, I would say that Palm Blast comes out on top. Before we begin discussing the moveset differences of the two weapons, I want to point out that hand-to-hand arts like the other new weapon types are suffering from an oversight in their PvP poise damage. In one of the previous patches, all weapon types got their own PvP poise damage multipliers to different skills, which the devs have forgotten about. So hand-to-hand arts are dealing less poise damage than intended. I am including the screenshot for the claw poise damage, because Dryleaf arts should have poise damage similar to the claws, while the Dane's Footwork's first hit would have even higher poise damage by my estimate. If you're watching in the future, check my pinned comment to see if this is fixed. So the moveset of hand-to-hand arts is probably more similar than you think. For example, on their one-handed light attack chain, the only difference is the first hit of the light attack. I have the Dragon Communion Catalyst on my offhand to better help you tell if I'm one-handing or two-handing the weapon. On their two-handed light attack, which is basically paired light attack chain, the first and last hit are different. The second to fifth hits are all the same. It might be easier to see the similarities and differences if I overlay the clips like so. Here, I thank Waffle again for grabbing the hitbox clips for me. I am going to show the first two hits of the light attack chain. You will see that the Dane's Footwork has a longer reach and step-in due to its first light attack. While the first hit of Dane's Footwork's light attack chain is indeed a tad bit slower, it is easier to land thanks to this extra range. In addition, it also has 50% more poise damage on the first hit. You will also see the weird hitbox that connects the leg to the floor, which is why you will see all Dane's Footwork frame data as two separate attacks, even if it only hits once. Next comes the heavy attacks. I know these are paired weapons, but I still want to discuss the one-handed heavy attacks. The Dryleaf art's one-handed heavy attack deals slightly less poise damage on the second hit, and comes out a tad bit faster. This is to set up what I want to say for their two-handed version, which more people will care about. For some reason, the heavy and charged heavy attack of the Dryleaf art deals more poise damage than the Dane's Footwork all of a sudden. While the first hit of the heavy attack is roughly as fast, you can recover much quicker after the second heavy attack of the Dryleaf art, because you perform both hits simultaneously with a double palm strike. Therefore, I think the Dryleaf art's heavy attack comes out on top. But do remember one crucial thing though. These heavy attacks don't grant any hyper armor whatsoever, unlike larger weapons that you tend to use charged heavy attacks with. Since they also don't deal more poise damage, you will not be using these nearly as much. The better alternative if you do want to stance break is honestly to spam the very powerful Palm Blast in place of your heavy attacks. Dryleaf Whirlwind will work too, if they do end up providing it with hyper armor in the future. With these out of the way, the rest of the moveset are the same. This is the one-handed and two-handed light running attack. This is the heavy running attack. The light jump attack followed by the heavy jump attack. You can see a pattern here that the light running and jumping attacks use your fists, and the heavy running and jumping attacks use your kicks. The rolling attack. The crouch attack. The backstep attack. Now, I have heard some people suggest running the Dryleaf arts on the main hand and the Dane's Footwork on the offhand, or vice versa. From the motion values and frame data though, I think it is inferior. but you are welcome to try and find some niche combos, especially for PvP. So with that, we pretty much have things covered. Since we now know the differences, let's see which one is better. First, allow me to point out that if you want to run martial arts for your DLC playthrough, you will have to start with the Dryleaf arts, as you get this very early on. The Dane's Footwork is locked behind a quest much later into the DLC, but it is worth it to swap to the Dane's Footwork once you get it. Why? Because I think this is overall the better hand-to-hand weapon. Maybe I should say foot-to-foot? The reasoning is simple. First, the biggest aspect that Dryleaf Arts comes out on top is the heavy and charged heavy attacks. This, as I've just explained a minute ago, is not too relevant because the heavy attacks of these martial arts are not strong attacks to be spamming. It's also not a huge difference. The first hit charged attack of Dryleaf deals 31 poise damage while the Dane's Footwork deals 28. You will find much more success spamming moves like the two unique weapon arts, especially Palm Blast if Dryleaf Whirlwind doesn't end up getting buffed with Hyper Armor. Palm Blast's Hyper Armor and huge charged radius makes it a much more consistent option for a charged attack. On the other hand, Dane's Footwork's light attack exchanges a bit of speed for a longer range and reach. It also comes with more poise damage and the potential to utilize the Shattered Stone Talisman and the Chicken Feet. These kick buffing items work on all hand-to-hand combat moves that attack with your feet, so Dane's Footwork has more damage potential than Dryleaf Arts, thanks to kicking with your feet more. Once the poise damage bug in PvP is fixed for martial arts, the hand-to-hand arts light attack will be much stronger, which is where the Dane's Footwork will shine. Like and subscribe for more detailed weapon breakdowns like this one. If you want to support my work, please consider buying my fantasy novel or donating to my Patreon down below. With a book purchase, you can also request a topic from me. Krite, signing out.